All right, let's get into, I guess, another pseudo-college hoops-related topic, and that is the departure of Billy Donovan from the Oklahoma City Thunder. Billy Donovan on Wednesday night, Tuesday night, whenever it was, basically he met with Oklahoma City, and they decided to mutually part ways. And it's funny, right, because you hear the term mutually part ways, and most of the time it's total BS. Coach sucks. He's basically getting fired, but they don't want to call it being fired. And so they call it mutually parting ways as a nice way to say, you suck at your job, you're fired. That is not the case with Billy Donovan, who basically is in a situation where he came to Oklahoma City. The team was a contender. He came to try to help the team win a championship. They've obviously lost Kevin Durant, lost Russell Westbrook, lost Paul George. Now they're in rebuild mode, and especially in a pandemic, they're probably going to trade their high-priced older players, specifically Chris Paul. They're going to get rid of those guys. They're going to go young with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and some of the other young pieces on the team, and they're going to go into rebuild mode. And so it doesn't really make sense to have a $5 million a year coach who was brought in to coach veterans to try to win a championship be part of a rebuild. By the way, it's kind of surreal, I might add. It feels like a million years ago that Kevin Durant was in Oklahoma City, but Billy Donovan's first year at OKC, it was Kevin Durant's last year, and he was basically brought in to try and lead KD and Russell Westbrook to a championship. Of course, it doesn't happen. They get to the Western Conference Finals. They're up 3-1, can't win. KD leaves. Westbrook stays. Then they bring in Paul George. Then Paul George demands a trade. Then Westbrook gets traded, and now here we are. But the point I'm trying to get to, without going off on too many all sorts of side tangents today. Tommy Boy, Joe Lunardi, Kevin Durant. Now we're back to Billy Donovan. Okay. But the reason the Billy Donovan stuff is interesting is, of course, whether he intends to ever come back to college basketball or not, he is now immediately already the hottest free agent in college basketball. And from all reports, he wants to stay in the NBA, and it really stems back to the end of his time in college basketball. I think he got tired of recruiting, the travel, dealing with parents, dealing with players, dealing with AAU coaches. He's like, dude, I just want to go to the NBA, all basketball all the time, don't have to worry about all this nonsense. And so by all accounts, he does want to stay in the NBA. I saw Woj tweet that the Chicago Bulls could have a lot of interest in him, but I would say a couple things. One, Chicago Bulls are in a rebuild just like the Oklahoma City Thunder are. So I'm not sure that he is that much better of an alternative than what they could. I'm not sure that is that much of a better alternative than just staying in OKC. Two, on top of that, I don't know what jobs are actually that good out there. I guess in theory, the New Orleans Hornets job is pretty good with Zion and Lonzo Ball. Doesn't appear as though Billy Donovan right now at least is a candidate. Same with the Indiana Pacers. Doesn't appear right now as though he is a candidate. And so it's easy to say, I don't want to come back to college, but sometimes you really don't have any good options at the pro level. I think back to Fred Hoiberg, who was ironically with the Chicago Bulls, gets fired, wants to stay in the NBA, not a lot of great options, ends up coming back to college. And so I do want to talk about Billy Donovan in the vacuum of college basketball, even if I don't necessarily think he is in a rush to come back. And all I'll say is this. There are a lot of coaches right now who should be thanking their lucky stars that their schools cannot afford to fire them at this exact moment. Because obviously, look, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and I think it's worth noting that I do think that for the most part, a lot of the college basketball and college football coaching carousels are going to basically be non-existent this year. Pete Thamel from Yahoo actually wrote a really good article about this from the college football perspective. But when you look at all these schools cutting sports, cutting teams, cutting jobs within the athletic department, it's going to be really hard to justify firing a coach and paying him $8, $10, $12, $15 million a year to go away, not just in football, but in basketball. Now, I know there are exceptions. Danny Manning was fired late at Wake Forest, but that was before this pandemic really picked up. I mean, I think when he was fired, there was a belief that football was going to be relatively normal this year, and also that his whole buyout was paid for by private funds and private donations. Now I think as athletic departments are cutting jobs, furloughing people, I think it's going to be hard to justify. And a lot of coaches should be thankful for that, because if Billy Donovan is available, I'm just saying, Like he's going to get a lot. He's going to be at the front of the line for a lot of jobs. I would start, by the way. You know where I would start? Ironically, I would probably start at Florida. Now look, I don't think Mike White's getting fired anytime soon. And I'm not even saying that he's been justified to be fired. But never forget, Billy Donovan won 2 national championships at Florida, and I believe made 5 Final Fours, either 4 or 5. I can't remember. When you make that many Final Fours, AT tends to forget, okay? But Mike White is clearly not Billy Donovan. And Florida is clearly not the program that it was under Billy Donovan. And so all I'm saying is, under normal circumstances, I could see the scenario where Florida fans would be like, look, I'm not saying we got to push Mike White out, but maybe you contribute $50 to his buyout. Maybe you contribute $50. I'll put in 20. Let's get this guy out of here. Mike White, the last 3 years, 21-13, 20-16, 19-12. You mean to tell me Billy Donovan wouldn't be an immediate upgrade at Florida? I think under normal circumstance, I'm not saying they would fire him. I'm saying they might think about it, though. Texas with Shaka Smart. Goes without saying. Said it on this podcast months ago. If it wasn't for coronavirus, he'd be out. Texas kicked the tires to try to find somebody to replace him. They couldn't get anybody to leave their job in the spring because, of course, you couldn't travel. You couldn't do anything that you needed to do to interview for the job. You couldn't pull your kids out of school. So Texas, in theory, could be looking for a head coach next year. But again, maybe Shaka Smart's lucky. And then you go across college basketball, and I'm just telling you, there are a lot of programs that I think have coaches that are like, dude, we like our coach, but if Billy Donovan is available, that guy's got to go. Let's get Billy Donovan in this place. And so it'll be interesting to see going forward. I don't think Billy Donovan's in a rush, and I do think Billy Donovan wants to stay in the NBA, but who's to say that the NBA opportunity will provide itself? And if he is not coaching in the NBA next year, I'm just saying watch out. Because assuming that we don't have a 346-team NCAA tournament, and assuming somebody's team sucks, and assuming people get fired, Billy Donovan will be the hottest name in college basketball coaching circles. I have not given up the idea that maybe, just maybe, he's coaching in college basketball next year. All right.